Those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan van der Coolwijk. I look after the cyber offering at iTOO. I think just continue to set up a little bit of the sort of context that we're looking at. So I'm just trying to change my slide. There we go. This is a live threat map that Checkpoint publish. They are finding blocking nearly 90 billion compromise attempts per day. That is 15 times the number of daily Google searches that they see on a daily basis. As Emma was saying, phishing compromises, ransomware type attacks, all these sort of business email compromises are rising dramatically. So these are just a couple stats from a report that was done by Mimecast, who a lot of the companies out there are starting to use to try and secure and look after their mails. I think quite scary is 94% of organizations they surveyed had experienced phishing attacks, and 61 believe that it is inevitable that they'll suffer a negative business impact from an email home attack. This very much echoes what we are seeing on our claim stats, where email-based attacks are rampant. And then we skip ahead to 2020, where COVID-19 has effectively become the single best event to leverage cyber attacks from. And hackers out there, from skilled to opportunistic hackers, are leveraging COVID as much as they can. First, looking at working from home, trying to distribute as much information as they could maliciously around COVID. So we saw a massive spike in the number of malicious websites registered around COVID, as well as a whole bunch of different phishing campaigns, generally targeted either distributing ransomware or at harvesting your authentication credentials. And now we're going into an interesting time as we move back into level 3, where we're seeing another change to the norm, and it's kind of round 2 where staff are going back to the office. So we've kind of adjusted to working from home, a lot of us, and now we're changing that routine up again. And a lot of people are working a bit from home, a bit from the office, and trying to sort of juggle, what do I do at home? What do I do at work? How do I look after myself? There's also a lot of concerns around, is it safe to be back at the office? How do I distance myself? They're also worried about their friends and family. Are they secure? Are they safe? This makes people a little bit nervous. They may be a little quicker to click on a link, which they wouldn't necessarily have done in the past. They're eager for information. They are concerned. So that becomes ripe sort of picking ground for hackers who are out there trying to lure people to click on that naughty link or open that evil attachment. And we are seeing a new wave of attacks that are now starting to come out globally and filtering down in South Africa, leveraging this return to the office concerns. If we consider the new norm, remote is here to stay. So I don't think we're going to see that changing soon, possibly not even after we see that there is a vaccine to corona. Staff, especially key staff, are going to be seeking out employment opportunities which can allow them flexibility and the ability to work remotely. Social distancing is going to be with us for at least the medium term. And workplace evolution for a lot of companies has been compressed from a couple years to a couple months. I think we were moving towards more remote working and those sorts of things. And that was probably a couple years sort of project, moving to the cloud, etc. And that's all had to be accelerated into a couple months. For a lot of companies already, and it's now a big consideration, is, well, how do we adopt technology and how do we start engaging our clients in a new way? This adoption of technology means that data is not necessarily in the one place it was, it's kind of distributed further out. And that does bring about a lot of new risks around securing that data and looking after it, and how your staff are actually working with and engaging with these systems and the data they use. So it's an interesting time from a cyber perspective, because there are a lot of the exposures that were there which are now amplified, and there's new risks getting introduced to companies as they look and find ways to survive and hopefully thrive in the new norm as such. Jumping onto cyber insurance, this name cyber is great from a marketing angle, but not really great in encompassing how broad and what all the insurance policy actually covers. So if we look at the 2 core triggering events of the policy, there's a network security breach and a privacy breach. Both the definitions of those are really quite wide. And just to run through a couple of the things which can actually trigger the policy, things like corporate espionage, cyber extortion, denial of service attacks. A downstream attack is one which is often overlooked. So that's where your environment is hacked or compromised and is actually used to launch and, effectively launch attacks against other companies and them suffering damages from that. Hacking, I suspect you would expect to see on a cyber insurance policy. insider and privilege misuse. And this starts to tie in quite closely with what Emma was saying and moves wide of that traditional sort of moniker of cyber where you just think of hackers all the time. You've now got a policy which could be triggered if you have an employee who does something naughty or releases information accidentally, and that applies to your service providers as well. So, we've seen claims on our side both where it's an insider who's acted maliciously to try and steal data and extort their employer, and a service provider who has gone onto a company. Their IT guys have stolen that data and tried to extort money from the company. So these are instances which we're seeing increasing. Malware you'd expect to see on a policy. And then you get to physical theft and loss. And this is really quite a broad part of the policy and extends as far as physical hard copy data. So if you have printed out copies of clients' ID books or other sensitive information, and it's in the boot of your car is lost or stolen, and that could actually then trigger your cyber insurance policy as well as if you have a memory stick or a laptop or something along those sorts of lines with sensitive data on it that is lost or stolen. And then you've also got this new emerging sort of risk profile where it's the threats posed by either third-party access to environments or where you are now starting to use these third-party platforms, so moving to the cloud, etc. If we jump onto what the cover actually provides, I find it easiest, in my mind at least, to see the policy as comprising three core elements. The first one is the incident response process. So on that, we've got a 24/7 emergency response hotline. And the things that you're covered with there are incident triage, which is really IT specialists coming in to see what's happened, how do we contain this, how do we prevent further spillage or leakage, and how do we look to get your business back up and running as quickly as possible. There's your data and system recovery. What's quite nice with the way that they do this is the investigations are often conducted in a forensically sound manner. So whatever evidence they do collect can then be used in court later on and is admissible. And this becomes really important in a case where, let's say you have 10,000 clients. On server number 1, you have their contact details. On server number 2, horrible, well, not a bad example, you've got their payment card details. A hacker's broken in, they've stolen 100 people's identity information. The forensic investigation is going to be able to prove that that was what the damages were, and that greatly impacts on what your response needs to look like, and what are the potential damages you're looking at, and how unhappy are your clients going to be with you down the road. Again, ties in quite closely with what are the potential reputational damages you could suffer. Legal guidance. So as we know, the sort of data privacy regulations and legislation is changing quite often. Poppy is supposed to be coming out locally in the not too distant future, although we'll see how that progresses with COVID. But already companies, if you are storing or processing data relating to an EU citizen or advertising and providing your services into the EU, so think guest houses, etc., you have a GDPR exposure. And GDPR is very, very nasty. It in fact makes Poppy look very timid and very tame. So that's something you've got to bear in mind. So here you've got the legal guidance to advise you on what do you need to do from a regulatory standpoint. Who do you need to notify, how, when, and how do we go about framing those notifications? You've also got the crisis management side of things, which is PR and reputational services to try and minimize the potential reputational damage that you could suffer. So if you have a hack or a compromise and you find yourself on the cover of, or on the front page of News 24, how do you go about trying to minimize the reputational damage you could suffer? And then really nice is you get the cost to look after those who have impacted. So notification costs to notify those who have been impacted, and remediation services to try and prevent them suffering further damages. These are really important in responding to an incident because it's how do you make sure that you still have clients to continue with your business going forwards. We've also got the cyber extortion cover, which comes in under incident response. And the policy really manages cyber extortion in the following way. Step 1 looks to confirm the validity of an extortion demand. So if I've hacked into an environment and I claim to have hacked into an environment and I'm demanding a payment not to publish the data that I've stolen, you're going to want to confirm that I have actually been able to steal some data. Step 2, let's see if we can recover without paying the ransom. Really ties in more with ransomware, where possibly there's tools to decrypt the data, or maybe there's a key being published that can be used to decrypt that data. Then step 3, if we can't recover and the best course of action is going to be to pay the ransom, the policy will extend to negotiate and settle that ransom as well. From there, we jump onto covering financial impacts that your business could suffer. So a big one there and a big selling point in a cyber insurance policy is the business interruption cover. You may well have business interruption cover under your normal commercial insurance policy, but that's triggered by a physical or a tangible damage, such as a fire or a flood. Something like an extortion or cyber extortion, a ransomware incident, or a disgruntled employee who has now deleted all of your data in your systems. Those things are not going to trigger those policies, but could very well would trigger your cyber insurance policy. You've also got the increased cost of working, and on the claims we've dealt with, it's been quite scary to see how quickly those ramp up. So staff working overtime to recapture data, service providers hired to reconfigure and rebuild systems and servers. And then the policy also will cover fines and penalties like your GDPR and your POPI fines and penalties to the extent insurable by law. So it's not really 100% clear where we will or won't be able to cover those. We'll have to wait and see once POPI is in place, but the policy does already cater and allow for it where we are legally able to do so. Then jumping, I see that in the slide there's a mistake. So we're going to jump across onto the liability cover. So under the liability cover, you're going to get defense and settlement of liability claims arising from data that has been compromised from your environment. So where people have suffered damage, maybe they've had fraud committed against them, as well as where your environment has been compromised and used to launch attacks against another company. This is becoming a lot more relevant as we see companies exchanging data with each other a lot more, and so forth. So if I hack in and I leverage the access that you have into another company to drop ransomware into their environment, they come to sue you for the damages and the downtime that they've suffered. Your cyber insurance policy is going to respond to that. And then you've also got the digital media liability element, which would be your defense and settlement of liability claims arising from defamation, unintentional copyright infringement, or unintentional infringement to right to privacy. I know that was a lot to spit out you in one go, so I'm going to try and recap that quickly in a couple short sentences. So the cyber insurance policy really has three core main elements to it: the incident response process, the financial impacts you could suffer, and then the ensuing liability cover. If we look at the incident response process, it's the IT provider costs to understand what happened, contain it, and get you back up and running as soon as possible. It's the legal guidance to guide you through the regulatory requirements from a data privacy perspective. It is the PR and crisis comms costs to try and bring down and reduce the potential reputational damage you could suffer. It's the cost to look after your clients and try and prevent them suffering further damages, and your cyber extortion cover. The financial impact, it's your business interruption, increased cost of working, fines and penalties. And then when we move across to the liabilities, which is unfortunately not on that slide, it's defense and settlement of liability claims from the data compromised, your environment compromised and used to cause damage to others, and then the digital media liability. And at its core, that is a cyber insurance policy. There are a couple optional extensions onto that. So outsourced service provider, your core policy already covers the data that you may be using in a cloud or a third-party platform environment. But what this does is it brings in the business interruption cover. So if you are, for example, using a third-party platform or getting data from a third party, they are hacked and that impacts on your ability to make money, the outsourced service provider cover will cover your loss of earnings. Phone phreaking, a lot of companies move to digital PABX systems. Hackers break in, they use that to either call premium rate phone numbers or route calls overseas. This piece of cover will pick up your financial losses from that. E-financial loss will pick up first party, your own financial damages as a result of a third party breaking into and gaining unauthorized access to your environment. Payment card industry fines, for those who are involved with storing or processing card data, this will pick up your PCI fines and penalties. And then physical damage is where a hacker has broken in and caused physical damage to an asset to pick up the replacement costs for that. Where to from here? So I think it's really important, and we often see people say, we're a small company or we're based in South Africa, who's going to be hacking us? Hacking is indiscriminate. If I am trying to commit ransomware or I'm trying to distribute a ransomware campaign, I'm going to push that out as far and wide as I possibly can. I don't care who you are, where you sit. If you're a nice guy, if you're at church on Sunday, you are a potential target, and the more people I hit, the more money I can potentially make. No security is unfortunately infallible. If we've got the guys from the big providers like McAfee, etc., coming out and saying, our security and our tools are great, but they can still be compromised, unfortunately, that is the reality we live in. You've got things which are difficult to secure from an IT perspective. So disgruntled staff, accidents such as sending an email to the wrong person, losing a memory stick. These things can trigger an incident. You can't pass the buck. Just because you're hosting on a cloud platform or with a third party doesn't mean that you abdicate yourself from the responsibility of securing data that was entrusted to you. To use the POPI terminology, you are the data custodian. And even if you do have contracts with those providers, they generally have quite stringent limitation of liability clauses in their contracts, so you're unlikely to get much help from that. Effective incident response is key to limiting the damages you can suffer. So we've got a really hot sort of team of security experts who we deploy in the event of an incident. They don't come cheap, but they have a massive impact on reducing the costs and the damages that you could suffer. Cybercrime is on the rise, and South Africa is really not immune. And if you are looking for more information, please do speak to your broker for more info. Maybe get a quote and see what it comes in at, and feel free to direct questions towards us via your insurance broker. Then just in a final sort of parting shot, this is something you can use both at work and at home. Treat your passwords like your underwear. Never share them with anyone, change them regularly, and just try to keep them off your desk when you do get back to the office. Thank you.